Hello and welcome everybody to Erickson Live. We have a very special episode today. We are talking about how to improve your goal setting as a leader. And I think it's a very good moment to talk about that sort of thing since a lot of us are coming back from vacation or might still be on vacation. Maybe you're seeing this either from the beach or on the plane home or something. And you're thinking about, so what does the rest of the year bring for me? And how do I want to show up? And that's what we're here to talk about today. How do we set important goals for ourselves, but also how are we part as leaders of the goal setting process in the team? Before we get started, as always, welcome to everybody that's already here with us. We're very, very glad to have you. Please let us know where you're joining us from. That might, as you might be on vacation, that might not be your hometown, but where are you joining us from? One of the things that I appreciate most about Erickson, one of the many things, is the global community that we have. So yeah, just let us in on where you're joining us from. And then also just a reminder that if this is the first time that you're engaging with any sort of coaching related content, or you're trying to figure out what coaching school is the right one for you, well, first of all, just listen in, how we're talking to each other today, what kind of the vibe is, what the approach is that we have to life in general and the topics that we talk about. But then also, if you want something a little more interactive, check out Experience Coach Training online. That is the free webinar that we have, and calling it a webinar doesn't quite do it justice because it's more of a workshop, because it is interactive. You go into breakouts, you practice being a coach, and it really gives you a feeling of what it is like to be in this online class environment, which, by the way, we've been doing for more than a decade. We didn't scramble to put it together in the last couple of months, but we have quite a bit of experience in terms of that under our belts. So that's my big recommendation if you want to take the next step, if you want to learn a little bit more. Experience Coach Training online. And the next one is happening on the 26th of August. And I'll put a link in the description and in the comments for you to check that out. All right, so let's see who is here today. I already heard a couple of comments flying in here. So we have Stefan from Bulgaria, welcome. We have Jawahir from Saudi Arabia. I probably 100% butchering that and not saying it correctly. I'm very sorry about that. We have Ingrida from Lithuania. We have Züre from Turkey. Zuzana from Czech Republic. Welcome again. And Mohammed from Belarus. Very, very nice mixture that we have there. And then, of course, we have Chris. And Chris is our guest for today. Chris is now I closed his bio by accident. Chris Cochran is the producer of the award-winning Hacker Valley Studio podcast. They have a podcast. Of course, that is the company. And he's also a cybersecurity leader. Chris is prior active duty U.S. Marine Corps intelligence, which led him to a career in cybersecurity later on. He has dedicated that career to building and leading advanced cybersecurity teams for organizations across many industries. His ultimate passion is finding and amplifying human stories in cybersecurity to inspire and enlighten our community. Chris, welcome. Glad to have you.
Glad to be on, Fabian. Definitely an honor to be on Erickson Live.
Yeah, awesome. And I think that's such an interesting connection that you're making there between cybersecurity and the human aspect of it, right? And
Yeah.
that's going to be interesting to kind of get into. So maybe give us a little bit more of a background on yourself, maybe, and how that human interaction fits into something as highly technological as cybersecurity.
Yeah, I would say it's really two parallel journeys that I've taken over my life. One is the leadership route, and the other one is more technical. And on the leadership side, I felt like I just kind of happenstanced into leadership, taking very early leadership opportunities when I was a kid. I was a captain of a wrestling team. I was in junior ROTC, which is almost like the military for kids in high school. And so I always took up leadership opportunities, and that kind of transferred over when I actually went to United States Marine Corps. And also when I was younger, I was a tinkerer. I was always interested in technology. Terminator 2 was one of my favorite movies. I thought I was going to build robots in the future. I didn't quite make it there. I didn't quite
That's the
do
lesson you took away
robotics.
from that movie?
Yes, I wanted to make Skynet, um, but I didn't quite make it to robotics. But I figured that computers would be the next best thing. So I got really interested in computers. I would get old computers, take them apart, put them back together. And when I was in high school, some of my friends were in a program for networking and interconnecting computers. And I missed the cutoff because I transferred halfway through the school year. And I said, hey, I want to get into this computer stuff. So what can I do? And they said, oh, just, go buy a book, kind of like fly by night sort of advice. And I took my back to school clothes money, which was about $75, and I bought a $75 book with all that money. And my mom was a little upset that I spent all the money doing that, but it ended up putting me on this trajectory to where I am today. And I read it like a novel. And so I was super interested. I was passionate about that, passionate about leadership. And that sort of just carried on into my Marine Corps career. After the Marine Corps, I was at United States Cyber Command, which is all about protecting the country from a cybersecurity standpoint. I got really into threat intelligence, which is really focused on what are all the bad things that can happen in the world from a cybersecurity standpoint, and making sure that the right people know what's out there, and so we can protect ourselves. Eventually, I started my own company doing threat intelligence. I was at a company called Mandiant, which was a really big cybersecurity company. I went to a couple consulting firms. I was at Netflix for a little bit doing threat intelligence. And then now, currently, I'm the director of security engineering at a company called Marqeta. But as you alluded to earlier during my intro, my real passion project is Hacker Valley Studio, where we talk about really, really human-centric stories in cybersecurity to inspire people across the board.
Very nice. That's awesome. And maybe with our audience, I have the feeling that not everybody might be completely in the know about kind of the military and its workings, and might be a little skeptical about what's going on there, and might have a bit of a misconception around what leadership means in a military context. Because maybe some cliches might be it's kind of command and like just enforce things, and just you go out there and you risk your life and you don't get anything in return, and it just you get coerced into doing things maybe. So what's your perspective on that? Like what is leadership like in the military?
Yeah, I would, even if you had that sort of conception of that's what leadership is in the military, you wouldn't be completely wrong. There are people that lead with their rank. I don't need to learn leadership skills. I don't need to learn soft skills because I have this rank. So you must do what I say. Of course, you're going to run into that. But some of the best leaders that I've ever followed were in the military. They were in the Marine Corps. They were in other branches of the services. There were even military members from overseas. And so I wouldn't say that all leadership is like that in the military, but you will find folks like that. But really, it's all about ownership. It's all about empathy. It's all about understanding, putting your team first, team health, small unit cohesion, which is keeping everybody together. All of that, those early lessons I learned in the military. So I bring some of that with me I brought some of that with me into industry. Some of it, obviously, I left behind. I left behind the ranks. Even if, I'm a director, even if you're an individual contributor that's might be fresh out of college, treat them with the same respect that I would a superior, the same that I would with someone that's a coworker at my same level. Really just treat everybody with respect. But it's really kind of choosing the things that are going to be the most healthy in building relationships, in building teamwork. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with Bruce Lee, but I look at Bruce Lee not only as like this incredible martial arts practitioner, as an actor, but also as a philosopher. One of the things that he teaches is to throw away the unessentials and just keep what works. And so that's what I try to do when it comes to leadership is keeping the things that work and then throwing everything else away.
Got it. So where does coaching enter into this? So you're on this trajectory. You have your military career kind of behind you. You're working in cybersecurity. What was missing where you thought, hey, coaching could be an amazing complement?
It's funny because I really had, I don't know if it was like a misconception or I did something while I was being a leader in cybersecurity that I felt was like coaching. But, I would soon learn that isn't what coaching is, but it kind of put me on the path. And one of the things we would do is we would find what is our team identity? There's a pretty famous person, pretty famous TED Talk, Simon Sinek, Start With Why. And it's all about figuring out what your purpose is. Like, what is your purpose? And I would take my teams through this exercise. And so we would sit there and we'd talk about what is the most impactful things that we do as a team? What are our values? Why is that important to us? Which is pretty much Erickson coaching right there. But then we also talk about, so what does that mean, who we are? Like, what is our identity? And we come up with a very short blurb of what our purpose is as a team. And what I found is that once you find out what your purpose is as a team, that automatically takes you into that next gear of not only who you are as a team, but also like, where are you showing up as a part of this team? Now you have a team identity, you have a mission, you're supporting the person to your left and to your right. It just leads to better teamwork. And so I thought, I've done this several times, and then I started to do that for individuals. And I thought, maybe there's more that I can learn about engaging with people and getting the best out of people and helping them with their goals. And so I went on this coaching journey, and it's been incredible. Exactly what I needed to learn, getting all the tools, learning about all the different visualizations, dissociation, association, like all these incredible concepts that you can use, not even just in coaching, but just in life in general, being a good listener. Those simple things are great for not just coaching, but just being a person in general.
Yeah, I completely agree. So we had a little bit of a chat before we went on the air, and we talked about your most recent episode of Hacker Valley Studio,
Hmm.
which is I forgot his name, but it was a guy there that was talking about security in general and cybersecurity in space.
Yeah,
So
Frank Pound.
yeah, so really big picture. And by the way, he was also talking about how there's high schools building satellites now. And I was
Yeah,
just thinking,
yeah.
did I go to the wrong high school? Like the most exciting thing that happened was chemistry teacher spilled a vial and we had to evacuate because it was like releasing some gas and whatever. Anyway,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, so that's really big picture stuff, right? Like that's really future forward, like really fundamental kind of things to think about. And when we put that together with coaching, on the one hand, it meshes really well because, well, coaching, like you said, it's all about visualization, it's all about thinking about the future, and like what do I want to happen. But on the other hand, you're also thinking about what might some other guy that really doesn't want the best for me think about, and what
Yes.
nefarious scheme might somebody think about that we have to guard against. So you are in a space that's very future focused, but you were saying before you're the one optimist and like a workforce full of pessimists in a way.
Yes.
So what's that like? Like how does coaching fit in? Yeah, in general, just tell us a little bit about what that day to day is like.
Yeah, I would say I think you need both sides. You definitely need the pessimist because they're thinking about all the things that can go wrong. Oh, this thing could happen, this thing could happen. But I think you also need optimists, and I think you need to work them together. It's almost like you have two coaches. You have a defensive coach and you have an offensive coach. I'm the offensive coach. I'm trying to get everybody to be their best every single day, pushing forward, putting in those goals, incremental improvements every single day, just getting better, better, and better. But you also need that defensive coach that's like, okay, this is what their attack is. This is how they do different things. This is what we need to be concerned about. I felt like there were more pessimists than optimists, and so I'm trying to like level that playing field. Not saying that we have too many pessimists. I think we just need more optimists in the field to be able to sort of like holistically look at cybersecurity. And so that's really where that comes in is we're almost trying to inspire people to look at things in a more positive light. We have this thing called FUD, which is fear, uncertainty, and doubt, that vendors try to peddle. They say, oh, things are terrible. You're going to get owned and you're going to have to pay a lot of money to do that. Are they telling the truth? In a way they are, but they're capitalizing on fear. And where I try to keep everything in a positive light with my good co-host Ron Eddings, we try to stay positive. We try to be those coaches from like just a general sense, and like, hey, we can do this together. Let's one team, one fight, and we'll protect our networks and the people that we care about.
Yeah, cool. Um, and how is it? So I talk to a lot of people in HR, and a lot of our colleagues are people in HR, right? And I think one of the things that is difficult about working in HR is that you're invisible when everything goes right, and all of a sudden you're in the spotlight when everything goes wrong. And I would imagine
100%.
that's kind of similar in cybersecurity.
Very similar. You want to be pretty much invisible. In theory, I think that you want to have a good working relationship with everyone in your company as a cybersecurity practitioner, because you don't want the first time they see your face to be when something is going wrong, because then you're managing some type of crisis together. It's some type of incident, and you're like barking orders. They're like, we don't even have a rapport with you. But if you have that early rapport, things work much more seamlessly. But what you do want to happen is you want cybersecurity to be as transparent as possible when it comes to the day-to-day work. Because a lot of times what happens is people get hung up on cybersecurity being that department of no, like, oh, no, you can't do this, you can't download that, you can't use this device. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to change that aspect of what cybersecurity is. I have an analogy that I like to use. Formula One, for those of you that don't know what Formula One is, it's the funny looking cars that go really, really fast around a track. And I wasn't into Formula One until maybe a couple years ago. I was at Netflix, and Netflix just came out with a special called Drive to Survive.
My
And it's
brother
all
loves
about
that. Yeah.
it's such an incredible show because it shows you the engineering prowess of the vehicles. It shows you the drama between the drivers, which is super interesting. But what I found really fascinating is the people in the pit. The people in the pit, they aren't just the people that change the tires. They're also the people that are watching the monitors, and they're monitoring the health of the car. And so what the people in the pit are doing is they can tell the driver how hard and how fast they can push the car to go to that next position, to go take the lead even. And they say, okay, the engine's running hot. You might want to throttle back and then come into for a pit stop, or your tires are running raw. That's what cybersecurity should be for an organization. It's telling that business how fast, how innovative, how out of the box they can think without putting undue risk and stress to the business, to then be as profitable and impactful as they can for their customers.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. Transforming it from no to like what is the range of options here? Like what can you work
Right.
with while still keeping everything safe and making sure everything is still here in a year from now.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, cool. So that I feel that like that brings us really nicely to the topic of the show, where it's like improving goal setting as a leader. And I feel like you're in a space where goal setting it might be challenging, I would imagine, because you can set all the goals you want, but
Mhm.
and you can try to be as proactive as you want, but every day you might wake up, or you might get woken up at 3 in the morning because
Mhm.
something's going on where you actually have to react, and you have to be kind of in survival mode. So I'm
Right.
really curious to like around like what's your kind of goal setting process, and then the next question will be like what happens when just somebody else hijacks your agenda.
Yeah, so I have a few concepts that I tend to follow, and they almost seem like oxymorons because when I look at the overall scheme, you're right. Anything can happen at any given day, and even for the year. Like, let's say there's a campaign of attacks that happens, and it completely takes you out of alignment for the entire year. There's this concept called purposive drift, which means that you have an end state in mind. Maybe think of yourself like being in an ocean. You know the direction you want to head, and you know where you want to go, but there are currents, there are waves, there are storms that might take you off track and put you on a little bit. But what you have to understand is that you're still headed in the right direction. You might be going a little bit this way, going a little bit that way, but you're still headed in the right direction, and not to over index on the stress of being off course. That's something I had to learn because I always felt like, oh, you set a plan and you stick to the plan and you go until it finishes. But if you only stay on that line and you say, I'm not going to move forward unless I'm on this line, you're not going to move forward. So being okay with purposive drift is one thing, but then also setting those goals at different levels, macro and micro level goal setting. So what are the things I can do today that are going to enable the goal for the week, that are going to enable the goal for the month, the quarter, the year, the next 5 years, 10 years. So you almost have to plan these things out. But then, like I said, that purposive drift, things might change. There might be a slowdown. All of a sudden you have a blocker in one of your goals and now you can't continue. You might have to pivot and go somewhere in another direction. You might have to do all types of things to be a little creative about your goal. You want to go through the process of planning, but don't feel like you have to completely stick to the plan.
What helps you to stick to that? Because obviously that's something that when you hear that, you say, oh, it makes sense, right? So why is it that why a lot of people don't really find a way of implementing that, or they get demotivated or thrown off course and have that feeling like I have to move here, and if I don't move here, everything else is worth nothing. So what empowers you to actually stick to that?
What empowers you to stick to it is that everyone is counting on you. Usually you're not making plans in a vacuum. You have some type of stakeholder. There's either someone above you, below you, that's really going to rely on this plan coming to fruition, whether it's a project or a program. So you have to stick to it. Usually you're getting your requirements in the very beginning. Okay, they need this because of X, Y, and Z. The business needs this because this is a business objective. You're not going to run into, at least I would hope not, a plan that is completely in a vacuum. No one cares about it if it succeeds or fails. That doesn't sound like a good program to me. But if you do have that means that someone's going to be counting on you. Even if things change, you have to go back to that stakeholder and say, hey, this is what's going on. Maybe there's some type of technical issue that makes things impossible at this current time. Maybe there's a process issue. Maybe it's even a personnel issue. But you have to communicate that and say, okay, this is still going to be the plan, but we're going to have to change things. But that's what sticking to that plan is all about, is supporting the people that are going to use the work or the product that you end up delivering at the end.
So it sounds like, and correct me if I'm putting this too much into my own words, but it sounds like we're talking about who else is benefiting.
Yes.
And like what's the vision that I have, and who am I serving, who are my stakeholders, and that's kind of where you start in your considerations.
Yes, 100%.
Got it. All right. Okay. So when I want to set goals, so when I have a clear idea of, okay, this is the people that I'm serving, and this is kind of what they need, how do I transform this bigger vision into actionable goals in your estimation?
Yeah, the way you do it is you break it down into small chunks. Obviously, you can have these big, hairy, audacious goals, but you need a way to get there. And one of the ways to get there is SMART goals, right? Making sure they're specific, measurable, achievable, time bound, all of those things that make a good goal worth having. Because you need all those parameters in order to get there. If you come up with something that's just not achievable, you can't do it, then what's the use of even trying? If you're going for something and there's no time base to it, and it could just go on forever, who cares if it doesn't get done? That's not good. So having those types of SMART goals at all levels, like I said, like day, month, quarter, yearly, those are really, really important. And work with your team. If you're a leader and you want to work with your team on those goals, they are going to often have the most context for the issues, the technical issues, the programmatic issues, in whatever field that you're in. So listen to them and understand what goals would they have. And you might need to have some guidance. You might need to push them one way or another, but really they're going to understand all the problems and the things. What you need to do as a leader is set the context for where the team is going or the business is going and say, how do we get this done? And that's when you bring in their team and you come up with those goals together, because it's even more impactful when you can come up with that goal with your subordinate or your teammate, in order to get things done. Like, okay, we came up with this goal together. I'm not going to let my team down. I'm not going to let my leader down, and we're going to march forward on this goal.
So you listening to your team, aren't you supposed to be the guy that gives the orders? Like, isn't the team supposed to listen to me as the leader? Am I not kind of making myself superfluous? What am I there for if I'm listening to the team?
Yeah, so at my, one of the coolest experiences in my career was working at Netflix. And this is very, very public. There's a book about it called No Rules Rules. If people are interested, just Google Netflix culture deck or culture memo. There's a couple different versions of it. And one of the main things that they teach is context, not control. And what that means is, like I said earlier, providing that context for the business, telling all the people all the things that are important that they need to know to get their jobs done, but don't overly control them. Because what Netflix is really good about doing is hiring the best possible people they can for specific positions. So they've spent 10 plus years in their role doing this thing. So they're the expert. I might be the leader, and I might have 8 people that do 8 different things. How am I going to have enough of the experience to tell them what to do, because they're the expert? I can only give them the context. So not saying, hey, you need to do this, because they're an expert. They know what they're doing. Just give them the context and let them do their best work.
Yeah. As you're talking about that, I'm actually getting the feeling that that part might almost be easier in the tech space, because things move so rapidly and develop so quickly that nobody can keep up with all of that, right? And something like, forget about college, but like something that I learned about like 10 years ago, like might be outdated, or like something that somebody just graduated and is an expert in that didn't even exist by the time that I got into it, and
Right.
so it's just an absolute necessity. Whereas in some other places you have the typical hierarchy of, okay, you've been the subject matter expert for 10 years, now you get promoted to manager. Not necessarily because that's what you want, but just because that's kind of the next step that you have to take. And then all of a sudden you're dealing with people and not with algorithms or not with machines or something. And you haven't been trained for this, but this is the role, because kind of that's what happens because you get promoted. So I think that might be a tough lesson for people to put into practice. It's like, yeah, all these things that you did for the last 10 years, you're not supposed to be doing anymore, because you're supposed to set the context for people who are doing them, and not letting that kind of have you micromanage people, and not letting you kind of compare yourself, oh, this is how I would do it, and instead kind of, dare I say, coaching and empowering people to do the best job that they can do in the way that they do it. That might be a big leap.
Yeah, but I would say 2 things to that. Number one, from a diversity perspective, diversity of thought, diversity of culture, you want to put these problems in the hands of people that think differently than you do. I'm not saying you can't come in and do a little hand holding for people that might need help, but you might get a very different or better outcome if you really trust people to make those good decisions and take those actions. The second thing is, you want to train people to be able to think for themselves. You want to train the people to be able to step into your job one day. If you make all the decisions for them and you don't allow them to make mistakes, you don't allow them to fail and say, you know what, I should have done it differently, they're not going to learn as much as they would if you just allow them to do that. So really enabling them to grow and be empowered, and to eventually take your job or even do something completely different. Maybe they'll even invent their own job if you allow them to really take all of the opportunity and the pathways that they can, and just make sure that they stay safe while they do it. I think that's one thing that it doesn't matter what industry you're in. I think it applies to any industry.
And I think it has a lot of weight coming from you, actually, because if you think about it, if the guy in the cybersecurity industry is telling you, allow people to fail with all the stakes that are involved, then what excuse do you have to not give people a little more freedom and a little more room to fail in order to learn from it?
Right.
Yeah, I love that. So that's something that I'm fascinated by in general, is this idea where we have coaching, and coaching can sometimes be seen as a little bit of a I don't know, I don't want to go too extreme, but um, lefty tree hugging, let everybody
Mhm.
be their own beautiful butterfly and that sort of thing. And
Right.
it can be that. I mean, to the people that like that, it can definitely be that, and it works very well in terms of spiritual context and whatever. But there's also kind of a hard side to it where it just works. It just produces results. And so if you
Hmm.
just take kind of the neuroscience aspect of it, and if you just take the how are we producing the most agile, capable workforce to reach our goals, it's still a really good tool to, or a set of practices to explore.
Hmm. Absolutely. And it's funny when we were advertising Hacker Valley Studio in the very beginning, because it's really about it, I would say it's 20% cybersecurity, 80% personal growth and development. And in the very beginning, we got very, very few listens, very, very few, because technicians, engineers, scientists, they didn't want to hear about soft skills. They're like, I don't need that. I want to get better at engineering. I want to get better at science. I want to be a better researcher. And so what we had to do is we had to pivot this concept of soft skills into just being better. Period. Like, oh well, this is about being better. Yeah, sign me up. And it's the same thing. It's the same exact thing. It's just a very different lens. It's like, how do you be the best engineer you can possibly be? Well, you're probably going to have to listen. You're probably going to have good communication. You're probably going to have critical thinking, being creative, mindfulness, all these different things that don't necessarily apply to the core science of that practice. But if you mesh them together, you come up with somebody that's really, really capable across the board. And so it's almost like we sneak in the veggies with the ice cream spoon. So that's what we try to do there. And so you're right.
Yeah, I love that. Um, yeah, it's really nice. Um, so, what would you say in how far? So yeah, so out of the you're still going through the art and science of coaching right now, right?
Yes, I have one class left, and then
Ooh,
on to the master's portion,
nice.
mastery portion.
Cool. So what would you say, what are some of the highlights for you? Like when we talk about how to be better and what's like just really useful, what were some of the things that stood out for you in the program?
A lot. There's so much. Everything from the frameworks to the tools and techniques that were super impactful. I'm a big visualizations guy. I've always been a creative in the body of a technician, and I really appreciated that, because not only did it give me sort of like this base for visualizations, but even like you could take that above and beyond what is there. You can tweak things the way you think would be more impactful for your coachee. There's just so much about even like the Ericksonian principles, understanding that your coachee is okay. Even some people even need to hear that themselves. Some self coaching, right? That you're okay, that you have resources, that you can get things done. Because I feel like, especially with this last year, especially with everything that's going on a geopolitical scale, people feel like they're lost. People feel like they don't have resources. People feel like they're not okay. But if you kind of take on that persona that I am okay, immediately things start to look more positive. If you start to realize I have resources and there's always a way to achieve what I want to achieve, then you start to think more creatively out of the box, and you'll find ways to make things happen. I can't begin to tell you how many times in my life where I felt like things were just impossible, that things were just absolutely terrible. And luckily, I don't know if it was luck, I don't know if it was my personality or any of the mentors that I've had through my life, but luckily I've been able to be creative and get myself out of those situations. Some people have been taught that they don't have any power, that they don't have any creativity, and so they feel like they're limited to this box. But by going through this course, you're enabling people to think more positively, to think more goal oriented, solution oriented. And you also teach yourself that along the way. And so I feel like that has like a ripple effect. If that's how you act, then that's how your children are going to see you act. And that's how they're going to teach their children. And so really, coaching is all about bringing more positivity to the world, from my humble opinion. And so I feel like that the more people understand some of these principles, that they do some of these exercises for themselves, the more they teach others, the better the world's going to be.
Yeah. And I mean, just sneaking in the slogan that we have here is changing the world one conversation at a time, right? Like it's really like that. You have getting on my soapbox here for a second. You have so much more impact than you might think. Like I work with a lot of people in big corporations, and what you hear often is like, I'm just this tiny cog in this big machine. Like what's going to change if I show up differently? It's like it's going to change a lot. It's going to change so much, because you're not just talking to that person that's in front of you. You're also impacting that person's family. You're impacting that person's coworkers. You're impacting the way that person is showing up tomorrow. You're not talking to them just today, but you're making a difference for them, not just in that one day, but throughout their next week or whatever. And that has that ripple effect. And then because the people that they touch are influenced by how they show up, and then in turn influence other people differently. And it's also intangible, right? But it is real. And so you have a much, much bigger impact if you're in a leadership position or not. But of course, especially if you're in a leadership position. I'd love to bring this stat just out every time I can. It's just, you might have heard the phrase, you don't quit your job, you quit your boss. And the inverse of that is, leaders have such an impact on employee engagement, on turnover, on whatever is going on in a company. So that even if you have a crappy day, you can just kind of take solace in the fact that what you do, how you show up, makes a big difference in other people's lives. So showing up as that best version of yourself, going with what you said, Chris, that other people are counting on you. So you're not operating in a vacuum, not even when you're working in space. It really does make a difference. So soapbox over. It's just really, really close to my heart, and it also goes to kindness and to self-confidence, is that everything you do makes a difference, and you are working in a community, and so understanding, like seeing, visualizing those ripple effects that go out from yourself in any given moment is kind of a big thing.
100%. And one thing I'd love to put out to everybody, because I've lived it. I've lived not only having bosses that were tougher and affecting my personal life, but I've been that boss that has affected people in the positive and negative way. I'll give you a quick story. I pretty recently had someone on my team, and I felt like they were, they had all the context, they had all the things, so I almost like left them alone to go and build. But that's not how it was received. It was received as me being disconnected and not supportive, and that caused them stress in their life. That as leaders, we can affect people on a day-to-day basis, like their entire lives. They could wake up with dread. They could go to bed with fear or anxiety, just by how we operate as leaders. And so everything got fixed because we had a conversation, and there were some miscommunications, misunderstanding. I'm like, oh no, I left you alone because you have all the powers to do the things that we need you to do. You have the vision. You have it. You just need to step into it. And since then, it was completely perfect. It was a perfect relationship between me and this person. But that's how impactful leaders can be, even unknowingly. We could be making someone's life absolutely terrible without knowing it, or if we're a terrible person, we do know it. We do know we're making their life terrible, and we think that fear and agitation and anxiety is going to make that person perform better. That is absolutely not the case. The people perform best when they have psychological safety, and that's something that we as leaders can help enable within our companies.
Yeah. Hey, everybody, what questions do you have for Chris? So we have about 20 minutes left here. We want to make this as useful and as impactful for you as possible. So if you are with us live, just type in, or even if you're catching up to this point later on, just type in a question that you have for Chris in terms of anything that we've talked about, anything that you want us to talk about, really, in terms of, could be goal setting, could be leadership, philosophy, leadership in general, could be coaching in areas where you wouldn't expect coaching to work or to find coaching. So anything that you have, just throw it at us. And Chris, I would imagine, I could be completely wrong, but I would imagine that in cybersecurity, you probably were used to working together remotely before COVID hit. Is that right?
A bit. I started working a little remotely in 2015, and it's been pretty much on and off since then. I would say now has been probably the best time that I've worked remotely because I'm used to going into the office and seeing people face to face. And even when I would work remotely before, I didn't have an office. Like I either worked from bed or the couch, and that does not lend itself to being the most efficient and productive that I possibly can. I'm sure some people can work like that. I'm sure some people kick their feet up and type on a computer, but I need to sit at a desk. I need to have my setup. I need to have my Remarkable 2 that I write on. I need all these things. So now I feel like I'm in a groove when it comes to working remotely. So, and I think remote work is a thing that's here to stay. I think with everything that happened last year, definitely pushed us into that. Is this possible for our company? And so I think more companies are looking at that. They're making decisions to let people work from home and work from wherever they're living. So I think things are going to change. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I think, honestly, for a lot of companies, it's a good thing because now you can hire people that are outside of your area. You can get that great talent in California. You can get that great talent in India. You can get that great talent in the UK, all these places all over the world. So I think it's a good thing for folks.
Yeah, I think a lot of people might be wary or a little bit apprehensive that stories like the one that you just told us might show up more often in a remote kind of setting. So
Absolutely.
how would you say, what's been your experience in terms of communicating and goal setting, but in general, just making sure people are on the same page and are working kind of in the same direction?
Yeah, as a leader and even as a coworker, you have to over-index on communication. And even if that means you have to say the same thing twice, whether it's in a meeting or in notes or in a memo or an email, just finding the ways that people tend to communicate. I'm sure there are some people, they hop on the call, they're sitting there, they're half listening, not really. But if you send them an email, they'll word for word remember everything that you said. So sometimes you have to figure out what are those communication avenues that people work best in. Maybe they work better in chat and you chat with them back and forth to kind of bring that context and that understanding. Some people have a hard time with the face-to-face. Some people don't like to turn on their camera and they like that text. Some people prefer that face-to-face. They feel email or messaging is impersonal and cold, and sometimes you have to figure out the best ways to communicate. Maybe use some punctuation from time to time to set that tone. Some people use emojis. Some people say they're very unprofessional to use emojis, but if someone tends to articulate with emojis to show their emotion, it might be okay to send an emoji back just to show them, I understand you, I see you as a person. So really indexing on communication is going to be super important. As long as you err on the side of communication and you always improve whenever something arises, I don't think you can go wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of times maybe rapport was taken for granted when we were in the office together.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes me back a little bit to, I don't know, for some reason, I don't even remember why, but you kind of have to, in Germany, you have to do a course before you get married. Like you have to do a workshop,
Oh, nice.
like the church kind of makes you.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a lot about communication. And what we found out, my wife and I, is that because we have different native tongues, we
Yeah.
kind of do what you just said, like we over-index in communication, and we're very much aware that what we say might be misinterpreted, right? And so we kind
Mm-hmm.
of put a lot of energy into it, or not, maybe not a lot of energy, but we kind of, as a default, have like, okay, so just making sure, checking in that I've been understood and that sort of thing. And that actually might have given us an advantage, not that it's competition, but might have given us an advantage as opposed to other couples that have the same native language and have never thought about what misconceptions there might be, like inherent in
Mm-hmm.
language and that sort of thing. Um, so I think where I'm getting with this is I totally agree with you that investing in that communication is something that is valuable in any context. And it's not like, oh, we're losing so much time, we're losing so much energy and valuable like resources now because we have to overcome this hurdle of being in different parts of the world and that sort of thing. But I think it might be something that a muscle that had been underdeveloped anyway, and that we're now becoming aware that it's a little bit atrophied. And now that when we exercise that muscle, it can really help us be more healthy in the way that we work together.
Absolutely, and it's not even just language; it's culture in general. There's a really good book by Aaron Meyer called The Culture Map, and what it's all about is how do you do business with other cultures. It might be different cultures within your company, or even doing business with other companies in different cultures. The cultures, in a very general sense, view the world very differently, and they go over different concepts of like feedback. In some cultures, direct feedback is seen as offensive, whereas in other cultures, that's sort of like the bare minimum. Like, you better be direct because this is how I tend to take feedback. And of course, that's an overgeneralization because of course there are different personalities in different cultures, but really just understanding that people take information differently, and just understanding that as a concept makes you a better listener, and I think it makes you a better communicator.
Yeah. Where do you draw the line with that? So my sense is that, sometimes you could say that some people might take advantage of that a little bit. Not to be too controversial, but you definitely do have some instances where people are taking the opportunity of remote working to kind of hide a little bit, and to be like, okay, well, you can't touch me, you can't follow up on me, you can't like appear behind me without me seeing you or something. How do you make sure that people are engaged, people want to do their work, and like just even if they don't, that they still do their work?
Right. I mean, if you have someone that legitimately just does not want to do work, or they don't want to be a team player, it just might not be a good fit. You might not be a good fit for them, and they might not be a good fit for you. And you just have that honest conversation. And I try to not put people in a position where they have to fend for their lives and their families or anything like that, but it just might not be a good fit. So having that open, honest conversation, because one, it could be a complete mismatch, and it's just, okay, yeah, maybe we should part ways. Or it could be situational. There might be something going on in their lives. Again, that empathy that I talked about earlier, like what's going on in their life. Maybe they need some time off. Maybe this is just all too much. There's, things going on medically in their family. Maybe, they had a family member that passed or is having issues. But just having that understanding and saying, okay, I'm going to give you as much time as you need so you can come back more impactful. And that's really how you can create bonds. Even if you end up parting ways, you could actually be doing someone a favor. You say, hey, look, things are working out. This is what we need as a company, as a team, and you're not able to meet it. Are you able to meet it? And they say no. Then, okay, let's part ways. I want you to go out and find that thing that matters to you. I want you to find that purpose. And, if you ever need help, even if someone's a jerk to me, if they ever needed help, I would welcome them to reach out to me and say, hey, look, I'm about to embark on this journey. Maybe I want to start my own company. Do you have feedback? Yeah, you should probably be a little nicer and work on your soft skills a little bit. Something like that. I'm always there to help people, achieve their goals, because I've been super fortunate in being able to do the things that I love to do. I feel like the more you can get people to do what they're passionate about, what their purpose is, again, the world's gonna be a little bit better.
Yeah. And I feel like I'm almost saying this every week, that what you just mentioned is sometimes perceived as a little bit of a millennial thing. It's like, oh, these guys, they want to have meaning in what they do. Ah, la-di-da. It's just a little bit...
Yeah, I can see that, yeah.
It's just our parents' generation has a little bit more of an attitude, I feel like, no, you work so you can eat. And like, if you don't like it, you still do it because you have to. And then you do what you like to do in your free time.
But I will add something to that. So there is a little bit of in between, and this is where the majority of people reside. It's not that you just go off and like, I'm going to be a famous TikToker. TikTok is a application that a lot of kids are using these days, and they put out funny videos or dance videos or whatever. If you want to say that's my passion, I'm going to be a TikToker, I'm going to start tomorrow, and you're probably not going to make a lot of money. I'll just tell you that, outright. Could you do it? Sure, anything's possible. But there's a book, one of my favorite books by Cal Newport. It's called Be So Good They Can't Ignore You. And it's all about having the career capital to do those things. And it's really against the passion hypothesis. Like you shouldn't just go do something because you're passionate about it. You have to have the requisite skills that people find valuable in order to make a living doing that thing. You might be able to do whatever you want as a pastime, for sure. But what you want to do is you want to find a job that you can be good at. And quite often they find that people that become good and efficient at their job, that becomes their passion, that becomes their purpose. So it's not, find your purpose and then go do it often. It's often do the thing that you're really good at and you'll find your passion. So there's a little bit of play there. So I'm kind of on the fence, not quite millennial, not quite old school, a little blend of the middle.
Yeah, and like we said, probably most people have to figure that out for themselves and see where they land on that. Sherry is asking, hey, could you repeat that book title and author again slowly, please? I think we can also do that, but we can also put it in the chat.
Yeah, that book was Cal Newport, Be So Good They Can't Ignore You.
Yeah, and you can always rewind, right? This is being recorded in the same. You can watch this in the same window that you're seeing it in now. So yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, and Sherry says thank you. So that, I think, a little bit goes to the heart of why coaching is so valuable, is because we don't prescribe like one recipe, but we work with where people are at. And if you're somebody who really needs a separation of work and life, then go and create that for yourself. If you're somebody who needs to eat, sleep, and breathe the thing you do, because otherwise you get bored, or you just don't really feel the meaning, then go and do that. But it's just like create the world in the way that allows you to do the most good, is maybe the one way of putting it.
It is.
Yeah. Cool. Chris, what's one thing that we haven't talked about yet that you feel is important around all of this? What's going through your mind right now?
I would say, touching on something I kind of brought up earlier, but that really just kind of hammered home, is this concept of empathy. I would say two things: empathy and gratitude. Empathy is that ability of understanding other people, their viewpoints, their needs, their backgrounds, just really just a true understanding. Because I feel like, especially now that everything's completely separated and now we're all virtual, so now we're talking through things like social media and things get lost in translation, and where people are already spun up. Like, just take a moment and just like have empathy for perhaps where they're coming from. Maybe they had a bad day and now they're venting online. Like, I know some people might have an issue with that because, hey, if they're being mean, I'm going to be mean back. But I think being doubly mean in this world isn't going to help anything. If everybody just kind of has more empathy and understanding of one another, I think people will start to sort of reunite over time. And then that gratitude. Gratitude is, I didn't really understand how powerful gratitude was until, I really started to practice it. And as I practice it, I realized there are higher and higher levels of gratitude. Brene Brown, pretty famous speaker and author, she talks about gratitude being that antidote when we have that fear. When I have 3 girls, and one of the things is you see them and you see them operate in the world, and you have this joy, and then immediately sometimes that joy quickly turns to fear. Like, oh, what if something bad happened to them? What if this unimaginable thing happens and they were taken away from me? And it's natural. It's a natural instinct for people to sort of lend to. But Brene Brown found that when you have gratitude, when you index on gratitude and you say they're here, they're healthy, they're happy, even if they're not healthy, they're here, they're still with me, I can still see them, I can still operate with them. Or even if you lost a child, like my mother-in-law, she lost a son really, really, really young. And it had to have been the most tough thing that a person can go through. But she indexed on the gratitude that she had that time with him. So I feel like if you use gratitude, I feel like no matter what your circumstance is, it would just make things just a little bit better.
How might one get started on that in your experience? What's kind of a little bit of a practice that you can slip in there every once in a while?
Yeah, one thing that I do personally is every time I pick up my children, I go very present. I feel the weight of their body, the warmth of their body, and I just get present, and everything just kind of flies out of my mind. So it's not only like a gratitude, but it's also a bit of a mindfulness practice. And one thing that I do, but I haven't been as consistent with, is writing down three things every single day that you're grateful for. It could be the same thing, it could be different things, but just like, what am I thankful for? What am I grateful for? Is it my family? Is it my health? Is it my career? Is it the house? Is it the food? Is it the water that I'm able to access? But just little practices of gratitude. For instance, I watch, documentaries. I love documentaries, and some folks don't have access to clean water. And if they want access to even pseudo clean water, they have to go very, very, very far. I can get up from my bed, walk 20 steps to my kitchen, and get completely filtered water instantly. And just understanding that, like thinking about that from time to time, just thinking, wow, I have it so good that I'm able to access water this efficiently in this way. Just thinking about that from time to time, I think brings that gratitude to your life and to the forefront of your brain.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's really powerful, and it helps us to program our brain in a way and program that subconscious, like that unconscious consciousness that filters the things that come to our awareness and puts away all the things that don't come to our awareness. And if everything that we're filtering out is the things that are positive, and if all the things that we're perceiving is only the negative stuff, then that's impacting us like physically, right? So yeah, it from my own experience, and it's something that I teach in a course that I do as well, because in terms of emotional resilience, like getting back up when life kind of punches you down, that one, like you said, it's an antidote. It's a pick me up, and it's just yeah, really, really powerful. So Sherry is having having a question, really interesting one for us as coaches. She's asking, how would you suggest a gratitude practice to a client when, as coaches, we're not supposed to suggest anything?
You always kind of have to turn it, right? What does gratitude mean to you? And they would say, oh, gratitude means X, Y, and Z. And then you'd ask, so what might be some ways that you would bring that into your life? Or you could ask, who is someone that you think exhibits gratitude? Oh, this person. Like, what piece of advice do you think they would bestow to you in order to bring more gratitude into your life? There's just so many ways that you could slice that.
Yeah, and the important thing is that even if you have the perfect recipe, if you just put it on somebody, they're just it's not going to be their thing, right? And if it gets hard after 3 weeks or something to stick to it, they're not going to, because why would I? It's somebody else. That's something somebody else told me, and it doesn't work for me. But if I came up with it, if it's something that this is my plan, this is something that I believe in, you have a lot more ownership. So that's why we keep that restriction on ourselves, right? Just for everybody
Absolutely
who doesn't quite know. Very, very cool. Chris, thank you so much for being here today. This has been a blast for me. Again, like I love talking to people that come from backgrounds where you wouldn't naturally expect to find a lot of coaches, and where it might seem like, hey, this is really cool that somebody with your background is interested in coaching. Any parting words that you want to bestow on the audience?
Yeah, I'm pretty easy to find on LinkedIn is where I usually stay. And then also my website, hackervalley.com. You can get access to all of our podcasts and things like that, and you can connect with us. But I would say let's just all get better together. Like let's stay tight. We are very tribal by nature, and now with the things like the internet, we're able to become one big giant tribe if we could all manage to put the effort in. And so we might not get there, but at least we could try. So let's stick together.
Let's get better together. I love that. That's perfect conclusion. Everybody, if you're interested in learning more about Erickson, remember that on August 26th, we have the free webinar happening where you can learn what it's like to go through coach training online. And yeah, it's absolutely free. It's a blast. You'll hang out with either myself or one of my colleagues, and you'll always have two coaches in every webinar, and of course other people that are like-minded and interested. And you just might find your tribe, like Chris just said. You just might find people that are interested in the same things you are, and community is a big mental what's the word I'm looking for? Not cleanliness, hygiene, mental hygiene factor. So, thank you so much, Chris. Check out hackervalley.com, and keep changing the world one conversation at a time, everybody. Talk to you soon.